everyone for joining. Welcome. This is our second installment of our Pathways to Success webinar series. This time we'll be focusing on bioscience and manufacturing. We were hoping to have two panelists join us today, but there was a last minute emergency come up, so we will add in that manufacturing piece maybe to the recording at a later point in time. But welcome, I am Dara Dorito. I am from Workforce Boulder County. I'm the Work-Based Learning Program Coordinator, and I'll be moderating this panel discussion. We'll have a discussion for about 25-ish minutes, might be a little shorter since there's only one panelist joining us today. And there will be some time for a Q&A session at the end. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat as they rise up for you. Olivia from Boulder Chamber will be checking that chat and providing some technical assistance in the background. So thanks, Olivia. And yeah, I can introduce our panelists. So we have with us Lena Demuth. She's the Senior Research Associate PCC at KBI BioPharma. As I mentioned, she's a Senior Research Associate. She has a BS in Biology and is currently working online on her Master's in Biotechnology at Harvard Extension School, which is pretty cool. Lena is a first-generation South Korean American and the first in her family to get a 4-year degree. She is currently working on her Master's and has worked in the biotech industry for over 3 years. She's a fan of art and music, and in her free time, she paints and is trying to learn ukulele. So pretty awesome. Thanks for joining us, Lena.
Thanks for having me, you guys.
Yes. So I guess we'll jump right in. So tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background, and including your educational and professional experience that has led you to your current career.
Yeah, so I started with a degree in biology from the University of Colorado Springs. And from there, I actually kind of serpentined around until I found my position here at KBI, and initially started working at a genetics lab. And as much as I loved bench work, it was 100% bench work and nothing else. And then that got a little exhausting. My next position after that, I had worked as a doc control specialist, and it was fully remote, where I realized I did actually miss the bench work and lab work aspects. So then I was always sort of on the hunt for something in between. From my document control specialist position, I had moved to working at LabCorp in their coagulation department, working as a quality control specialist. And there I got to help the lab and keep up with their quality control and double checking numbers and ensuring things were run properly. But I still didn't get any hands-on lab work until I got to this position where it's almost 50-50, where I get to do and spend my days doing lab work if I need to, or if it feels like maybe too much, or I've been working on it too much, I can do some quality control and data verification and sit at my desk and give myself a break from the lab work. Which for me, that's just such a perfect balance of being able to still get to do hands-on lab work, but at the same time, giving myself a break. So it's just not everything I do all the time. And yeah, all those like random kind of jobs led me to here. And I really like being here, and I really like working at KBI.
Very cool. Thank you. How long have you been at KBI?
I'm going on year 3 now.
Okay. And you mentioned bench work. I don't know what that is. I don't know if some of our people tuning in do.
I feel like that's just cliche, like when you see those like stock pictures of scientists and they're sitting at what we call benches, but just at a lab top in the lab, either working on putting together an assay or getting it ready to run in an instrument. Usually they're in the white lab coat and the blue gloves and the safety glasses, the standard PPE. But yeah, that's benchtop work.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
So was the path to your career what you expected to be? And if not, in what ways did the journey surprise you?
It was not what I thought I was going to do. I I feel like we put a lot of pressure on students to kind of know exactly what they want to do as soon as they turn 18 and work towards that goal. I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do science, and I really enjoyed problem solving, and science and problem solving really go hand in hand. Um, and so I worked what I thought what I should have done was right at the genetics lab, and then kind of realized over time that that really wasn't where I wanted to be or what I wanted to do. And then what surprised me the most, I think, about my experience and getting to where I am now is kind of the broad spectrum of jobs that this one degree didn't allowed me to work in, where here I was so narrow-minded thinking that, oh, I only have to do lab work forever and ever and ever. When really when I worked as a document control specialist, they needed somebody who had knowledge on lab equipment, and I had knowledge on lab equipment, and it really did. Um, there are just so many more avenues that this degree opened doors for that I didn't realize would have initially.
Very nice. And you're working on your master's right now.
Mhm.
Um, when will you finish that up, and what do you feel like what doors might that open for you?
I, I'm taking it real slow on the master's, so probably another 3 years. Um, and I'm actually hoping, I think KBI is definitely where I will continue my career. I don't feel I'm going to leave KBI. But this position I don't think is where I'm going to be in forever. And so at some point I hope to manage my own team and make it to maybe even scientist two level. That'd be pretty cool. I'd be pretty into it. And be able to sort of like guide a team, provide opportunities for people. That's something I appreciate about my manager now, is that if I ever voice that I want to learn this new assay or this process in drug manufacturing, which is what we do here in Boulder, he's always willing to find me a way in to learn how to do that, or find somebody he knows to help either guide me or hold my hand and walk me through it or personally train me. And so I would like to provide that for other people too, because I think it's important to always be expanding your horizons. I've really enjoyed my time here. I don't really want to leave. But I feel like I would measure professional success and not necessarily what my professional title would be, but
Mm,
on how much I enjoy my job and how much I gain fulfillment from it.
mhm.
And I feel like that used to be just this old mindset where you just hate your job and it's just what you do. But I refuse. You spend most of your life at your job. You shouldn't hate your job. You should feel like you're doing something important, if not for you, then the world. And for us at KBI, we always make it a point to remember that our patients are the reason why we do this.
Mhm.
And they're the reason why we have integrity in our testing. They're the reason why we work on quick turnaround times. They're the reason why we try and get it right the first time. And so for me, that's important. And that provides me with fulfillment in doing my job. Um, and yeah, my long-term goals, I would like to be a scientist too. I think that'd be nice. I don't know if I want to make it to a senior scientist. They got a lot more power that I don't know if I should yield, but um, I would like to finish this master's. But yeah, I would like to have my own little group of people I can support. And I do uh, currently have mentees that KBI has partnered up with a program called PTech, and I have
Mm.
two mentees, which is rare. Normally, you just have the one mentee, and I've got two, and they're great. And I invited them to this, so I wonder if they're there, but I can't see them. So,
That's awesome. I love that you mentioned the kind of the why, not just the title or the pay. People might think that that's why they do their job is for the paycheck, right? But really having your why defined for yourself is so important. So thanks for mentioning that.
I mean, the paycheck's still
Um,
nice.
yes, that's the bonus.
The icing on the
Um,
cake.
yes. What helped you get to where you are in your career, and what advice would you have for others who want to set off in a similar direction?
Um, it was a little bit of every single job. As I worked, I picked up more and more and more, and that would probably be my advice is to, if you get an opportunity to learn a new skill or to have this new experience, to actually take the time to learn it and put yourself into it. Because when I had first applied to this position, they wanted somebody with quality control experience. And in order for me to get that quality control experience, they wanted me to have doc control experience. And I had just worked as a doc control specialist. They also wanted somebody who with experience in the lab. And I got that when I worked my first job at a genetics lab right out the gate. And so it's all these like small little aspects of every job I've worked to that led me here. And I'm really, really happy that it's just how those cards fell. And so, yeah, my one advice is even if it seems like an arbitrary skill, like learning how to uh, verify data or keep organized, try and be efficient at it and learn it because you don't know how much that'll help you later down the line.
Hmm. That's great advice. I feel like first jobs are so pivotal in our learning and our career
Hmm.
path. I'm curious, how did you find your first job? You mentioned kind of out of the gate. How did you find that or arrive at your first job?
I had some friend in college who we were catching up. We got dinner one day, and he was talking about how he worked at a lab and that they were hiring somebody. And I was like, well, great. I'm still, at the time, I was working at an autism center for children, which is, I mean, nothing against that. I loved that job. It was great. I love working with children. But it wasn't, in the career I thought I was supposed to be in.
Mhm.
And he was like, well, yeah, like come on by. We'll give you a quick interview. And I went in thinking it was an interview, and the lab manager went in thinking it was just going to be a quick meet and greet, and I leave. So I was all prepared for an interview, and she was not prepared for an interview, but apparently that was a charming quality, and I was
Oh, nice.
hired in my first position there.
At least it wasn't the other way around, right? Where you
Yeah,
weren't
I
prepared for the
wasn't ready.
interview. So that sort of highlights to the impact of your network, right? Like, and just
Hmm.
talking about what you're hoping to do with your friends and family and everyone in your life. That's really cool.
Hmm.
Can you identify some of the hard to fill positions in your industry? And what are some of the key skills that these positions might require?
Yeah, I think some of the hard positions to fill in our industry are positions people like that are really important, but that people never
Mhm.
think of. Like currently we have two supply chain positions open, and you don't need a college degree to do them. You just need a GED or a high school diploma. And I think a lot of people think of like life sciences, you need some sort of bachelor's degree, when really we do have a lot of these really important supporting roles. And if you want to work in the industry and college is just not the route for you, we have space for you too. And so, like, I feel, especially when it comes to, I mean, maybe just all positions everywhere, you do need a really good attention to detail. Because supply changes is in charge of what chemicals we receive. When we receive them, they double check and make sure they're what we ordered. They double check that it's not expired. Because you'd be surprised how frequently manufacturers ship chemicals
Mhm.
and not check the expiry, and then we receive them and they're like, "Ooh, no, we can't use this. You need to take this back." And so they have a lot of attention to detail. But again, you don't need a degree to do it, but you can still be a part of the industry and still feel like you're making an impact. Um, and Organizational skills also, I think, is just over encompassing of all industries. But I
Mhm.
those two things, attention to detail and organizational skills, are really important.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning too that not all positions within bioscience that require a degree. I think a lot of people might think,
Mhm.
oh, I need an advanced degree to have any foot in the door there. But like you mentioned, a very important role like supply chain, you really don't need a college degree. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's really important. What can you tell us what a day in the life looks like for you? Just kind of what your day to day looks like.
Okay. But the nice part about my job, which is kind of what I mentioned earlier, it's really flexible. If I want to do lab work, I can. If I don't want to, I can do some data verification for either my teammates, or I can reach out to other departments and see if they need help. But sort of maybe a week in the life would be a little easier, where
Yeah.
Monday I sort of come in and we talk about what projects need to be done and when they need to be done, and who is on what instrument. That is also scheduling around other people to make sure that you don't get in their way, that they don't get in your way, that whatever instrument you need is available. And so I sort of set up a week schedule like that. Kind of a rule of thumb is we try not to test on Mondays and Fridays, just because Mondays everything goes wrong and Fridays everything goes wrong. And so instead, if you test on a Friday, you just come in that Monday and walk into the mess that was left over. So I tend to do a lot of testing Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. On Monday, I do a lot of data verification. Trainings are always being, as new operating procedures get updated, we have to retrain on them. Same thing with test methods. As they get updated, we have to retrain on them. Not like sit down and physically do it, just read on the changes and make sure we remember and sign off saying that we understand what happens. Um, and so that's usually how the week goes. So it's a nice balance of I get to still be in the lab and do the problem solving and figure it out while also kind of doing a little where I can turn my brain off a little bit and sort of read and absorb information instead of trying to do things.
Mm.
So that's honestly the best part about my job is the flexibility.
I know you mentioned that organizational skills are pretty important for any role, but how important would you say soft skills are in your industry? And do you have any tips on how to better develop those types of skills?
Yeah, I think soft skills are always important. I think even in like your personal life, like being able to communicate and work as a team, or just like um, time management is also really important. I should use a lot more of that in my personal life, but um, I all of those skills are important all around. I guess if I had to have a tip on how to be better, uh, or to develop soft skills, I would say um, take be intentful on listening, just anything, whether your coworker is coming to you with a problem or talking about their weekend, or if your mom is calling about how she got this great sale on the groceries. I feel like people are always just really wanting to be heard, regardless of whatever the story is. And if you can provide that like small avenue of letting somebody feel like they've been heard, then they develop more of like a trust in you. They'll come to you more with problems, knowing that you're going to actually listen to them and hear them out prior to moving on. And yeah, if you just be intent with the listening and hear people, actually hear them.
Mm-hmm. Active listening, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really great advice for any industry, like you said, and in any area of life as well.
Hmm.
Can you speak to the company culture at KBI? What sets it apart from other organizations that you've worked for?
Yeah, other than outside of the fact that I do really love what I do and know that it makes an impact on people's lives outside of this building, I KBI tries really hard to ensure a decent work-life balance. We a few years ago implemented a sabbatical program for people who've been here for 5 years where they get 4 weeks off in addition to their PTO they already have. We have what we joke as endless PTO. That's not actually what it is, but where you can borrow ahead of your PTO as much as you need, um, in the assumption that you're you're taking the time off because you need it, and not because you have to because they're about to expire at the end of the year, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We also have what is called a 9 by 9 program where you'll work 8 days at 9 hours and a ninth day at 8. And so every other week you'll have an extra day off. And if you have that as a Friday, then every other week you get a 3 day weekend, or I have it on Mondays. So every other Monday, I have Monday off where I can focus on paying attention to my class and making sure I'm doing everything I need for that. Um, we also have like an annual, maybe it's biannual now, company picnic where they try and get everybody together so you can just meet other people from other departments, finally put faces to names that you've talked to, like in quality assurance, where they come back with comments on something that you've done, and you can finally be like, oh, you're Robert. And like put faces to names and figure out who these people are, and then maybe even build friendships with them too, so you can have somebody to turn to when you have questions.
That's awesome. Like lots of work-life balance opportunities with the paid time off and
Mm-hmm.
flexible working environments. And it is so important to build those relationships with your colleagues
Mm-hmm.
too. What do you feel are some misconceptions that you held before entering this industry that folks thinking about going into the same field might want to be aware of?
Um, I I think there's a misconception, and maybe I don't know if it was necessarily a misconception or more of a learning experience for me. I genuinely didn't realize just how much work and money goes into getting a drug off the ground and onto the
Mm,
market. And I am constantly learning more and more and more as we work with different companies. We do a lot of contract work for our manufacturing department here, but we also do contract work for other companies where they send us stuff, at different stages. Sometimes they're barely making it to clinical trials and they're just trying to figure out if this is a stable enough drug to even push through to clinical trials. Or we already have drugs that we work on that are on the market and they're just trying to meet the United States pharmacopoeia requirements. And we provide that for them too. The paperwork saying, yes, they do meet the requirements. And it's just a lot of work and a lot of money to get drugs off the ground. And I think maybe I feel like maybe people thought that, with drugs and particularly with vaccines were the talk of the town, a few years ago, that it's so fast and quick and easy, and it really is super difficult. And the FDA could show up whenever they want, any day. It's you always are a little on your toes about when they show up. But yeah, I think that's my biggest learning is every single time I come in and we work with another company, I'm like, wow, this is so much, this is so hard.
mm,
And power to these other scientists that are working on trying to get this drug off the ground, because for me, that would stress me out.
yeah, definitely during the pandemic, I'm sure there was,
Mhm,
we were never in that space before of the sense of urgency of needing that
mhm,
vaccine so quickly. And I know KBI played a role in pushing a lot of that forward.
mhm.
Yeah. So this is our last question. What are some of the best resources for job seekers wanting to learn more about working in bioscience? And what resources do you wish that you had access to during your education or your job search that you might not have had?
Um, I think this webinar, I think, is a great
Mm,
resource. I wish more of them existed, so people can kind of get a glimpse. Also, it sounds so stupid, but I didn't make a LinkedIn until this year. And I
LinkedIn.
wish so bad that I had made one earlier. So one, I could just keep connected with like my college colleagues or network better. And a piece of advice I guess I would give is if you are curious about the industry or you want to talk to somebody and you don't personally know anyone, that's kind of what LinkedIn's built for. People are expecting to kind of be cold called or messaged randomly by people. So don't feel weird about it because you probably aren't the first person to randomly message somebody and ask them questions on whether they like their job or not. Because that's, I mean, what the whole thing is built for. So yeah, I do wish I had built a LinkedIn way earlier, and networked better, especially in college. But yeah, I feel like I should use LinkedIn for what its purpose, which is connecting people with other people in companies that you may or may not want to be a part of.
Hmm. That's such a great point about LinkedIn. I feel like people love to talk about what they do in their job and sort of how they
Yeah.
arrived there. So I think people are sort of fearful of that, but just reaching out and yeah, and having those connections there. And that's a great plug for Workforce Boulder County because we do offer
Yeah.
LinkedIn classes to help you get your profile up and created. We also have interview classes, resume building, things specific. We have a young adult program specific to 16 to 24-year-olds. So we can pop in the chat our website too if you want to find out more information for the folks listening in. If you want to do some career exploration or more panels like this, can connect with us. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, Lena, that we didn't get to cover that you really are eager to share, or if there's any questions in the chat.
Um, I can't really think of I did want to talk a little bit on our manufacturing.
Yeah, sure.
Because I know the other panelist was sort of
Yes.
shoehorned for manufacturing, but we do drug manufacturing here, and that's also another path where if all you have is an associate's or a GED, you can work in our manufacturing department and really learn a lot about the drug making process. We're always almost hiring manufacturers just because it is a hard job. We do have overnight shifts because drug manufacturing doesn't stop pretty much. And that's just another I think it's college isn't for everybody, and I understand that. And if working in pharmaceuticals is something you've always dreamed of doing, there are definitely positions out there for you. You just have to dig around a little bit, but they're there.
Hmm. Yeah, thanks for adding that. I think that's so important. Like we mentioned before, there's definitely opportunities outside of having a college degree in this industry for folks to enter into. Olivia, I don't know if there's any questions in the chat for us to answer.
I can come on screen here. There is one. Talk a little bit more about how you chose your master's program, like online versus in person, the institution that you went with, just a little bit more about that and the details there.
Right. That is actually a really good question. I'd spent a lot of time sort of deciding what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to work full time still. So for me, that had to it sort of boiled down to either I go to CU Boulder, which is I live in the Superior Louisville area, or I find an online class, maybe CU Denver if I could physically make it to classes. But it's just really nice to have the flexibility of online. So that's how I decided that I wanted to do an online course. And then there are a couple of online courses where you earn your way in, which I feel is the best way to judge my ability now to finish this degree than it is to judge me when I was in my 20s, which is now 10 years ago, back when I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. So therefore, there wasn't more effort or love put into my degree. And so Harvard Extension School provides an earn your way in degree. And I think the final nail in the coffin of deciding to go with Harvard, other than it is a real Harvard degree. When I graduate, I will go to Harvard and walk and wear the whole cap and gown. I do have to spend either I have the choice of a crammed class of spending 1 week there or 3 months there, which who has 3 months of time on campus doing a hands-on course. And but yeah, the official deciding factor was the cost per course. The average is about 5,000 per course, and theirs is 3,000. That's not a lot of savings, but it's enough. And again, luckily, another great thing about KVI, they are paying for part of it. So with them paying for it and me paying for it, hopefully I don't have to go into too much more debt. But yeah, it was a lot of vetting to make sure that this wasn't, I don't know, a weird side thing that somebody put Harvard's name on. But and then, yeah, the program also, they also have a master's in biology, which I could have just continued with my biology track, which is nice, but I do work in the biotech industry, so I feel that is applicable to this master's, as well as the biology degree. There wasn't an optional cram it into a 1 week course. I had to be there for 3 weeks at a minimum, and I just couldn't think of a way to swing it where I could not work for 3 weeks and find a place to live for 3 weeks in Boston. And so that is what decided the biotech course. It also comes with a biotech management certificate, which I think will be great since I desire to at some point manage a team to get accredited in that way.
Very awesome that Harvard has a more accessible program too, outside of, like you said, just being there. And so important to do your research to make sure it's legit. Thanks, Olivia. I think that was all of our questions, and thank you so much, Lena, for joining us. I appreciate it so much. Lots of rich information that you shared for everyone attending. We really appreciate it. And this is recorded, so this will be accessible via a YouTube link through the Boulder Chamber. And we will be having, this is a series, as the title implies, so we'll be having another one next month in November. And thanks again, Lena. Appreciate it so much. Yeah,
thanks for having me, you guys.
James, if you want to just introduce yourself, a little bit about your background, what your educational and professional experience has been leading up to your current career.
Yeah, so like Olivia said, my name is James Sapegin. I'm an engineering supervisor at Medtronic currently. I started at school at Colorado School of Mines. I pursued a bachelor's degree in chemical and biochemical engineering. After I graduated college, I knew I was looking for something in kind of med device or pharmaceutical. So that's primarily where I was applying. While I was doing that, I kind of stumbled across a contract company called Aerotech that was hiring basically students out of college, and they'd hire them during the winters and summers. And so Aerotech was partnered with Medtronic, kind of helping staff the production lines. And so this was kind of a strategy for that. And so I joined, it was basically winter of 2018. And I was basically working on the lines here at Medtronic to start out with. They kind of told me about some enrichment opportunities, which basically just placed people with certain backgrounds in positions that more fit their background. So I stuck around for that and applied for the next enrichment opportunity that came up, which was in operations engineering, mainly kind of like helping support the lines, making sure they're running, if they have issues, going out and investigating, troubleshooting, that kind of stuff. And so that was kind of almost like a contract role in itself, because it was a set amount of time. So as we got to the end of my enrichment, I started looking for other opportunities within the company to transfer into a more full-time engineering role. And so towards the end, I ended up applying for a quality engineer role, which is very similar to the operations engineer role, but more focused on the quality side of it. So as quality issues come up, making sure you investigate that. If there's questions about quality, making sure to answer kind of, what is this in spec, is this not in spec, that kind of stuff. And then just kind of, I was in that position for about 2 years. I was in the operations one for about 1.5 years. And so eventually, while I was in the quality role, this engineering supervisor role came up, and my background fit really well with it, just because the 3 previous opportunities I had exposed me to kind of a wide swath of the plant, and this new role required me to have kind of that basic understanding of the entire plant here at Medtronic. And so applied for that opportunity, and that's what I'm doing now. So currently I supervise, in addition to being like engineering support for the site on like second shift, I also supervise our maintenance techs on second and third shift.
Awesome, very cool. Are those enrichment opportunities something that everyone at Medtronic kind of has access to? Did you kind of seek that out, or how do those work within the company?
Yeah, so the enrichment roles are unique to Medtronic, and then from what I understand, also kind of unique to the Boulder site. But they are specific to Medtronic employees. So in my circumstance, right, I started as a contractor. I had to first convert to be a full-time Medtronic employee before I could qualify for the enrichments. But as long as you're a full-time Medtronic employee, you can apply to them.
Okay, that's awesome. Can you talk a little bit about like if your career path was what you expected it to be? And if not, what ways did the journey surprise you?
I would say it's all, for the most part, been a surprise. I don't know that, like, coming out of college, I necessarily had a realistic expectation of what my career would be. I knew generally, right, I wanted to start out in engineering, and then I wanted to move into a technical leader type role. So I guess that portion of it was expected. Kind of what specific roles I was doing along that path was a little less expected. I didn't necessarily know that I'd go into operations specifically. I think when I was first applying to a lot of stuff, it was mainly in quality. So eventually I got into quality, and then when this opportunity came up, I would have never guessed that I would have been involved with a maintenance a team here at Medtronic. So that was definitely new, and it's a welcome opportunity, because you learn from each of those roles. And what I found was each of those new lessons prepared me for the next thing, right? So I thought it was very valuable, regardless of kind of how it played out.
Yeah, that's awesome. And obviously, you've had a lot of roles at Medtronic doing a lot of different things. Do you see this kind of as the final step in your career journey? How do you measure professional success, and what are kind of like your long-term goals?
Mhm. I hope this isn't the end of the road for me. I've had a good time, like I said, just kind of learning the unique aspects of each of the roles. I look forward to seeing how, like, this new role and then my previous roles help prepare me for whatever's next. Um, as far as like how do I measure professional success, I think for me it's mainly making sure that I'm continuously growing personally, professionally, and then also helping to kind of grow the positions that I'm in, making sure that I'm always having that kind of positive impact on the company and the roles that I'm in. So that's mainly how I'd say I measure success.
Yeah, and do you feel like having those different positions and knowledge of Medtronic really a lot of comprehensive knowledge being in all those roles, do you think that helped get you where you are today? And what advice do you have for others who are kind of trying to set off in a similar direction?
Yeah. One, like my specific situation is less specialization, right? There's kind of those two sides of it. Either you can really like specialize in something. I know we've got several people who are like our laser welder expert, for example, or our controls engineer point person, right? And then there's people like kind of that have my background that have a little piece of everything, get kind of that wide view, kind of the jack of all trades sort of thing, that open different opportunities, right? Each of those paths offer something different. And that's something I think everybody has to kind of contemplate as they go along their career path. Do you want to be that point person for that specific thing? Do you want to dive into that and specialize into that? Or do you want a wider scope? And like I said, that's going to just it's going to give you different opportunities to go through. So that's my suggestion is kind of think through that, think of which of those kind of paths you want to go, and then just kind of make that a purposeful part of your career.
Cool. Was there something specifically that made you want to pursue being that jack of all trades or versus being in that specialized role?
I'd say for me, it was kind of like a wide interest in things. It wasn't like a hyper fixation on any one thing. I think I enjoy kind of getting exposure to all sorts of things. I've personally seen benefit from my career standpoint as far as each of those varied experiences. So that's just kind of what I've preferred, at least along the way.
Yeah, that makes sense. Speaking of other positions, can you identify some of the hard to fill positions in your industry? And what are some of the key skills that those positions require?
Yeah, so within the last year or so, I'd say I've noticed we've had some difficulties, at least here at Medtronic, filling kind of like supervisor roles. It seems like the market's been pretty competitive with that. I've seen a couple different hiring cycles where we'll interview somebody or we'll interview several people, and all of a sudden they fall through because they found a different offer that they like better, or we've had supervisors leave because of either monetary reasons or they just want to get exposure somewhere else, that kind of stuff. So I feel like that's been pretty competitive recently. I'd say I've seen also some difficulty in hiring like electrical engineers / technicians type roles. I'm not quite sure what the reasoning for that is. At least at the Boulder site, we have a high emphasis on kind of electrical engineering and technician work because our med devices are powered through electricity. And so we have all sorts of different testing that's involved with that. We've got equipment that are all powered by electricity, right? And kind of design improvements rely on a lot of that understanding. So we're definitely looking for people who grasp that. And I'd say like general line engineers, operation engineers are not necessarily that specialized in that. And that kind of ties back to that jack of all trades thing. The operation engineer is someone who has to have a wide range of areas of expertise to a degree, or at least a little bit of areas of expertise in each of these different areas. Whereas, like I was saying, we're hiring for specific electrical engineers or technicians because we need that specific skill set a little stronger than someone that just kind of has that jack of all trades stuff. As far as like the skills associated with those positions, like the people management side of things for supervisors, being able to kind of handle conflict, hold people accountable, be able to coach people through their own personal development. I think those are all key things for the management side or the supervisor side of this. For the technicians, it's going to be understanding schematics and whatnot for electrical diagrams. It's going to be making sure you know kind of the design of these different electrical systems, being able to interpret blueprints and that kind of stuff. That I would say that's the main stuff.
Cool. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about your current apprenticeship program and if it helps fill any of those skill gaps or if it plans to in the future.
Yeah, so so this year, working with the Boulder Chamber and then Front Range College up in Longmont, we were able to start the first maintenance apprenticeship through Medtronic. And so that was mainly to fill kind of staffing gaps and kind of try and strengthen the pipeline of incoming technicians for my group in particular with our maintenance techs. And so I'm not aware of any necessary discussions about that. It kind of like expanding to a supervisor sort of position, but definitely I've already been in conversations with like our facilities management team to see if that's something, because they'd be looking for a similar candidate to I would be from a facilities maintenance standpoint. So I know there's already possible interest in expanding it out to that. Just kind of through this whole process, I understand that Front Range also offers like apprenticeships for like metrology, as well as a few other different kind of specialties, right? And so I could see those kind of expanding as well here at Medtronic, but kind of time will tell. Depends on kind of what the staffing needs are for those. But I think as we kind of see where this apprenticeship goes for at least the maintenance side of things, I think Front Range has a great program for electrical and mechanical. So that will definitely help strengthen, I think, at least our electrical technician background for our group here at Medtronic. So.
Yeah, awesome. Can you talk about the importance of soft skills in your industry? I don't think that's something that people immediately think of when they think manufacturing, but you talked a little bit about it with people management in some of those roles. Do you have any tips on how to better develop soft skills and just how they're used every day in your industry?
Yeah, so I mean, certain positions are going to use soft skills more than others, right? A lot of the people-facing roles, so whether you're a supervisor or let's say you're marketing or sales or something like that, are probably going to rely more heavily on those soft skills. If you're in an engineering role, although you won't necessarily rely as heavily on those soft skills, they're still important for kind of your career development as you progress, right? If you want to be the more technical side of things, it's still important that you can kind of communicate to site leadership or other people about the projects that you need or want to work on, right? And how that benefits the business. You have to be able to make those points, otherwise you're just going to get assigned projects and you're going to have to deal with it. And maybe that's fine for some people, but you still need to be able to have those conversations and have that be able to help direct the kind of course of the business, right? Especially, like I said, if you want to go into leadership and you're in a technical role to start, you're going to need to work on those softer skills to get kind of more exposure with site leadership, to be able to say, yep, I think this person can handle managing a group of 17 plus people, right? And as I've gotten into this role, I've seen that as I've kind of progressed. I'm coming up on 2 years and still kind of seeing, okay, I need to work on this. I need to work on my communication with my team, or I need to work on the coaching and all that with my team. So it's still a learning process. You're not going to have it right off the bat, but they all play a key part regardless of kind of what your role is.
Yeah, totally. I love that you talk about it in terms of career development and how important soft skills are there. Can you speak a little bit about the company culture at Medtronic? Obviously, you've stayed there for a while. What sets it apart from other organizations you've worked with?
So I haven't had a very varied exposure to like engineering, different companies in like engineering capacity. I think I interned over the summer while I was at college with like my old school district from K through 12, and that was in like the IT group. And then out of college, I worked for UPS very briefly as like a package handler. So I really only got exposed to one person in the company. So really the biggest comparison, I guess, between like that IT position in this has been, I think both of those cultures were good. Obviously, this one's different in that like it's all manufacturing specific, right? So much larger population. When I was in the IT group, it was kind of just a small group of 4 or 5 of us, right? So you can kind of get like a bigger kind of family aspect to it from the manufacturing side. Also, I'd say like Medtronic's a way bigger company, so there's a different aspect there. Medtronic is 90,000 plus employees, I think, worldwide right now. So it's been great. The few opportunities I've had to kind of go see some of the other Medtronic sites. But I mean, in general, I've really liked kind of the culture here at Boulder. Everybody's really kind of driven to make an improvement. Usually you can like rely on the people that you're working with. So that's always been great. And so it's just been a real positive experience, at least the 6 years that I've been here. So I've stuck around, at least for now.
Yeah, cool. Can you talk about some of the misconceptions that maybe you held or maybe you hear from others entering the manufacturing industry that people going into the same field should be aware of?
I don't know that I knew enough necessarily when I was first applying to necessarily have a whole lot of misconceptions from a manufacturing standpoint. A lot of that was kind of learned along the way. I think it kind of depends on which areas of manufacturing you're in. Starting out on the floor, there's definitely different mindsets of if you're on the floor versus whether you're like in an office position or whether you're management or that kind of stuff. And I think there's little truth to different misconceptions. Some of them I think are more blown out than others. Manufacturing can be kind of a demanding area, and it's kind of a constant demand, I'd say, from maybe an engineering standpoint as well as kind of a production standpoint. You've got kind of a constant flow of projects coming. You're constantly sustaining the lines. You've got fires coming up every other day, if not every day, sort of thing. So as long as you can kind of handle that constant level of stress, you should be fine. The other side, because I haven't necessarily worked in it, but Medtronic has a big, obviously, R&D, NPD group, NPD being new product development. But my understanding is like from those positions compared to like manufacturing, instead of that kind of constant level of stress, you have lots of lulls as you're kind of like working through a project. And then as you get to the end of your project, all of a sudden that stress spikes. So that's kind of a thing you have to keep in mind as you look, if you're looking into kind of those technical areas, whether you want that kind of constant level or you want like super peak levels of stress for a brief amount of time. It all just kind of depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think when I first learned about manufacturing, what it really was, I kind of thought that it was the opposite of what it really is. There's really so many different positions and so much going on in one organization. So I think there's a lot of opportunity, and you spoke to that. Can you talk about some of the best resources for job seekers wanting to learn more about working in manufacturing? Or what resources do you wish you had access to during your education or job search?
Yeah, I think definitely rely on your schools as you're going through either trade school or whether you're going through college. Generally, they're going to have different kind of career fairs at different points throughout the year. I know mine's had a career fair kind of at the mid-year for people graduating in the winter, and then also one at the end of the year. Unfortunately, like if you do end up going to mines, I don't know that I would recommend them for healthcare necessarily for their career fair. I did not see a whole lot while I was there, just because mines has such an emphasis on like energy, petroleum, mechanical engineering type stuff. And I just haven't seen those relationships necessarily built out with the mines career fair. But I can't necessarily speak to some of the other colleges around here, but they all, I'm sure, specialize, have certain relationships, certain companies that recruit highly through them. But yeah, definitely utilize those. Most schools have kind of a career center, so they can help build out your resume and prep you for career fairs, do mock interviews, that kind of stuff. That's always helpful. Make sure you're looking outside of the colleges too, because obviously companies are attending other career fairs throughout the state or throughout the country. Don't forget about those opportunities. I'd say if you're really interested in like med device pharmaceutical and you're in Colorado, I know there's a bioscience group that connects a lot of the different companies within Colorado. So try and join groups like that. Keep an eye out for groups like that, because then you can go to different network opportunities. I'm sure there's certain career fair stuff that they do as well, different recruitment stuff. So those are great ways to meet new people and find out about new positions. That was one thing, and I don't know that I touched on it earlier, but something I definitely found helpful through my career development was very purposefully making connections, networking, right? It all goes back to networking. I have several instances in my career where I can point to, I met this one person for the first time and they ended up being my boss a couple years later, right? And we have a conversation later and they're like, oh yeah, I was really like impressed when we met or whatever, and I've kind of monitored your progress forever, so I wanted to have you as my employee. So definitely don't discount the interactions that you have with people along the way.
Awesome. Thank you so much for speaking with us today and sharing some of your knowledge about working in the manufacturing industry.